Now, I did promise in the abstract for this talk, I was going to give you a scenic tour of the developer landscape and the developer workflow. And classically, it's always described as a pipeline. Pipeline involving, at a classical level, development, some form of integration, some form of testing, and then some form of deployment. That's how it's classically described. Well, I'm sure you all know, as I do, it's not like that in real life. It's never neat and tidy. If we take development and we just focus on that, we blow it up and look what's inside. There's lots of things inside. We're writing code. We're actually doing testing while we're writing code. We're probably doing integration. We should be doing integration while we're writing code. And as part of the testing, we should be deploying code locally and running it and making sure it works. Which means that while we're iterating, we might be bouncing backwards and forwards between coding and testing all the time. That's one thing we should be doing, especially if you're writing unit tests. You all write unit tests, yes? You might actually be running the code and using the app via a web browser or some form of test suite, at which point you've got to deploy it and test it. So you're bouncing around this particular loop. Hopefully you know about integration. If you don't, we'll be covering that later on in the talk. But hopefully you're doing integration on something like a daily basis. Therefore, you're actually bouncing around this loop as well, where you're doing integration. You're probably having to fix the code to deal with merge conflicts, and maybe having to change some design as part of that, depending on who else has shipped code first. You're doing your testing, either with unit tests, or again by deploying and going around the test loop that way. And let's not forget, this is a very common practice, where people just go straight from coding into development, skip all the testing and all the integration whatsoever. And I imagine that there are still people out there who still edit code on live servers as a rule, not as an exception, even in 2018. And that's also getting some knowing smiles around the room. Yeah. So that's development. That's what development's about. Now, the reason I wanted to show you all that, I want to establish a common understanding, because when we're talking about automation, people forget where the automation needs to run. Because we do our development workflow in multiple places, we need the automation to be able to run in multiple places too. It's easily overlooked. So for development, we're using desktops, laptops, and increasingly VDM, cloud workspaces. Amazon's got a product that's starting to get some traction with that at the minute, for example. Integration, we should be doing that wherever we're doing development, but we may also have some sort of continuous integration server or service where we're doing integration as well. Testing needs to happen wherever we're doing development and integration, and we need to be able to deploy from any of these places as well. We need to be able to do all of these things. So it's important that if this talk inspires you, and I hope it does, to go away and investigate automation and maybe start making some changes in your organizations, make sure when you introduce automation, you're not reducing your flexibility at the same time, because you'll come to hate automation with a passion. And this is something everyone forgets. Don't forget, sometimes everything's on fire, and what matters most is getting an emergency release out the door. Make sure your automation doesn't stop you when that happens. Because at that point, if you've got people trying to disable automation while everything's on fire and make changes, mistakes can happen. And you can end up making a bad situation far, far worse. So it's better to plan for emergencies ahead.